Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to trace a really surprising line, an intellectual thread that stretches all the way from the thinkers of ancient Greece right to the rolling hills of the Shire.
And of course, our guide for this has to be J.R.R. Tolkien. I mean, the man didn't just create Middle-earth, a world so huge and so detailed it feels more like a piece of lost history than a story. He also thought really deeply about why we even do this, why we create fantasy in the first place.
So yeah, let's just dive right into that. What is it about these made-up places that gets its hooks into us so deeply? Why do we care so much about the fate of hobbits and elves? It feels so important, so true. That's really the big question we're tackling today. What is this powerful drive to create what Tolkien called secondary worlds?
Well, Tolkien had this incredible theory he called sub-creation. The idea is that when a writer builds a believable secondary world, one with its own rules, its own history, they're not just telling a story. They're doing something that's fundamentally human, maybe even something divine.
And this, right here, is the absolute heart of it for Tolkien. This act of sub-creation, it's not just a clever storytelling trick. For him, it's an echo of creation with a capital C. We make worlds because we ourselves were made. It's this deep, basic impulse that reflects our very nature. Okay, but that brings up a really fascinating question, right? Is putting words on a page the only way to sub-create? What if that same creative urge could be expressed not with text, but with a whole way of life? And thinking about that leads us to a connection that is, well, pretty surprising. And that surprising connection is Saint Francis of Assisi. I know, probably not who you expected to pop up here. But think about it. Tolkien made a fictional secondary world to help us see the truth of our own world more clearly. Francis, he kind of did the same thing, but with his actions. He gave up on the primary world of money and power so that he could see it with totally fresh eyes. He basically lived out a poem. This way of looking at the world is a perfect example of another one of Tolkien's key ideas, which he called recovery. It's about getting back a clear view of things without the blur of familiarity. As Chesterton says, Francis didn't just see the woods or nature, he saw each tree as a unique, almost holy thing. He was recovering the world from our tired, jaded viewpoint. And for him, this wasn't just some nice metaphor. In his famous prayer, The Canticle of the Sun, he talks to the elements like their family, brother sun, sister moon, brother fire. By giving them names, by seeing them as kin, he was sub-creating a whole new relationship with the world, one based on reverence, not on what he could get from it. He was making the world new again, just by how he saw it. Okay, so if these acts of creation, whether they're written down by Tolkien or lived out by Francis, are reflecting some kind of deeper truth, then the way they're structured has to matter, right? Especially the ending. How is a story that deals with real good, real evil, and real hope supposed to wrap up? To figure that out, Tolkien looked way back to ancient tradition, and then he completely flipped it on its head. See, the classic Greek tragedies that Aristotle wrote about, they ended in catastrophe. That's the big tragic downfall that makes you feel pity and fear. But Tolkien, he suggested something else for fantasy, the eucatastrophe, the good catastrophe. And for Tolkien, this is so much more than just a cheesy happily ever after. No, the eucatastrophe is that sudden, breathtaking, joyous turn right when all hope seems lost. Think about the eagles showing up at the Black Gate. That's a eucatastrophe. It's a moment of grace you didn't see coming, and it gives you this quick, sharp glimpse of a deeper truth, that joy and hope are real, and they exist even beyond the story you're in. But Tolkien wasn't just making this stuff up in a vacuum. To really get what he was doing, we have to pull on that thread and follow it even further back. Where did this whole idea that art can actually shape our reality even come from? And that takes us all the way back to our starting point, the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle and his concept of mimesis. Now, this is the idea that art isn't just a simple copy of life. It imitates it. It represents people and actions in a way that shows us a deeper, more universal truth about what it means to be human. So Aristotle basically saw the artist, the poet, as a maker, someone who builds a very specific reality, a play, to explore these big truths. By showing a great hero's downfall, the artist could stir up these powerful feelings of pity and terror in the audience and then lead them to catharsis, a kind of emotional cleansing.
This is the original blueprint for using stories to understand ourselves. So here it is. You can see the golden thread connecting everything. It starts with Aristotle's idea that art shows us truth. It runs through St. Francis living out a poem of creation, and it lands with Tolkien's theory that making fantasy worlds is a reflection of our own divine spark as makers. This is not a new idea. Not at all. We're talking about a conversation that has been going on for 2,300 years. That same impulse that gave us The Lord of the Rings is part of this long, ancient human quest to figure out our world and our place in it by making new ones.
Tolkien just captured this so perfectly with this beautiful metaphor. He saw all of human creativity not as us making something out of nothing, but as us taking a single divine white light and refracting it, splitting it into a million different colors and shapes that bounce from one mind to the next. Whether it's philosophy or a life of faith or an epic story, we are all taking part in this act of subcreation.
When you start to see yourself as part of this huge 2,300-year-old tradition of makers, it's incredibly empowering. And it leaves all of us with a really big question. It's not just, what will you create? It's, what truths do you want to bring to light? What stories are you here to tell? So, what world will you make?